Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Neil, Eli, Refracted Curvature, Chocolate Sane, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
You're gonna need a flat earth for that.
Discord gang.
You're going to need a flat earth for the impossible to repair new Apple products that we were talking about in the pre-show.
No, I just figured I'd say it because Jaren hates it.
What is it with...
Have you seen that video, Nathan?
Okay, we're not going to do pre-show stuff, right? We're going to do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth?
Negative.
Not since 2020.
The horizon is not Earth curve. Some still believe it is.
Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Wait a second, we're moving?
Is there any evidence that we have axial rotation?
I just stepped out of my car, and I'm sure if we were moving, I would have felt it.
Well, Neil, some people think that the fact that we're not moving is proof that we're moving.
Yes, that. Oh, yeah. Not seeing the effects of Coriolis drift is, for some, a proof that we have drift at 15 degrees an hour. I mean, it's insanity to show that we don't have it. You know, Usama Mandan is the best reference of this, so you and your reference frames are ruined. We're not going to see any drift that I claim when it's a Coriolis drift that the globe's supposed to have that we don't see. Any evidence of the distance
atmosphere, Nathan, the atmosphere, it moves with us.
Well, then we don't see drift. There's supposed to be 15 degrees an hour Coriolis effect. We don't see that. When they say the Earth and atmosphere travel as one, well, then we don't see Coriolis effect. That's their claim proof. The effect we're supposed to see to prove we're spinning is two separate reference frames. Coriolis deflection. So to say, well, Earth moves with the atmosphere. Oh, really? So atmosphere, that's sphere-shaped air oxymoron. Air doesn't take the shape of a sphere, it fills its containment. But the oxymoron sphere-shaped air surrounding the globe Earth that's turning also moves with the turning Earth, violating the first and second law of thermodynamics, to not give us an induced effect of Coriolis, which is what the globe uses to claim it's spinning. Okay. Sounds very much like an anti-flat Earth rhetoric from an idiot who's lost his globe faith.
When you put it like that, it's so simple. Yeah, we don't see Coriolis.
Yeah, that's the debunking. What's that? We're supposed to have 15 degrees an hour drift. No, we don't. End of claim. Any evidence the distance
that's quick
to
as
the...
hell.
Go on.
I said, that's very sharp. That should be a type of black swan. It's like a dagger through the heart.
Where you been?
People get Jedi
like
mind.
You really don't have to do much. They've basically taken away the effect that they just said they have by claiming that the atmosphere and the Earth are moving together. Well, you just put yourself in one reference frame. So what the hell are you doing? You just took away your Coriolis that needs two. So why are you telling us that there's two and that we can see drift when you tell us we can't see drift? All they do is give us reasoning for why we can't see the very things they claim to see. Just like curvature. Where's the geometric horizon now? Oh, we've never seen that. We don't claim that. You shouldn't expect to see that. But you're telling us it's there. It's blocking boats and buildings over there. Look, that's what you're saying it's doing.
Hold on.
But we're not saying that.
But to someone who's never
It's
heard this
insanity.
before,
He's not finished. Just, Gene, you've got to get a handle on interrupting people. People do want to just
Hello.
wait
My
for the
bad, my
pause. Wait for the gap.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Arwin. Go ahead, Chocolate. Just round out your thought.
No, I'm sorry. I was just kind of ranting about how every time they claim something on the other side of their mouth or the end of the sentence, they're going to claim something the opposite or something that debunks the claim they just made in the prior statement. Every time.
Right, go ahead.
Man, Chocolate was on a good one there too.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Go ahead, Gene.
well, no, this is just us understanding. As me, I think I understand about 60% of what you guys say, and I barely the Coriolis. It just dropped on my head right now after all those videos and everything. It just dropped on my head. What I understand it now. Like, yeah, Coriolis is it's very simple to prove that we're not moving, and I just thought that was a quick, short, concise way of killing the Earth rotation.
Sure, but you've already failed. You're saying prove we're not rotating. No. Just don't be fooled. Okay, let's just break this down into two parts. Part one, you've identified, and I'll agree with you. It's very simple. They say, that's important, they say, you don't have to disprove this, it's up to them to prove it. They say there's drift, Coriolis effect. Everybody who's got a globe belief is familiar with the words Coriolis effect and how it's indicative of a proof that Earth turns according to them. So they are the positive claimant in this regard. However, the effect, that's drift at 15 degrees an hour, because we have two separate reference frames, that's Coriolis effect, we do not see. Nothing's drifting. I.e., you don't launch a drone from the equator, an arbitrary and imaginary defined position based on elevation angles off a flat plane to Polaris. You don't hover a drone and see it drifting away from you as you turn underneath it at 15 degrees an hour. That'd be 1,000 miles an hour of the drone drifting away from you. Not because it's actually flying 1,000 miles an hour, but because the Earth is claimed to be turning underneath the drone at 15 degrees an hour. That's 1,000 miles an hour edge velocity that you would notice as the drone drifted away from you at 15 degrees an hour. We don't see it. Then we get into Chocolate's wrangled angle of how and why they explain why we don't see it. The 15 degrees an hour they claim would prove we're turning. Now that is the most complicated flat Earth discussion point there is. Bar none. Complicated as it gets. When it gets into the wrangled angle of their anti-flat Earth, separate rhetoric of globiolus effect, with its pseudo-sounding claims of physical Earth turn that's going to be assumed without proof, and an atmosphere turning with it without proof, and a minor deviation north to south that is imperceivable, that's what they'll start claiming. Well, you've got to understand
So you
all
have
of the
to-
above to be able to argue it, as opposed to just go, there is no Coriolis effect. Well, yeah, you're right, there isn't. But then when someone like Simon Dan turns around and says, we wouldn't expect to see any, you and your reference frames, Nathan, the ones you're claiming, says Simon Dan, are ruined. What, my claim of Coriolis effect on a turning Earth? So when your high-profile, claim-to-be-globe-proving numpty like Simon Dan turns around to you and tells you that your gene, reference frames you're saying, should give drift, because you did, when you said that you can show how it doesn't happen. Well, it's not your claim, but it becomes your claim if you're not careful. And suddenly you're having to argue for how we should have drift at 15 degrees an hour, but don't. While they tell you that we shouldn't, we wouldn't expect to see it. And suddenly you're all confused in what you should or shouldn't be proving, or should or shouldn't be debunking. Coriolis is complicated. But there isn't any. There should be if we're turning. We're not.
But shouldn't we say there's
So
no
you basically
Earth-based
have to-
Coriolis?
It was on a really good thought there, Neil. You've ruined that thought from Gene. Go ahead, Gene. I'm sorry about Neil.
You're apologizing for Neil. Anyways, so you basically got to jump in front of it and say, hold on. Who says we're moving? Because my cousin yesterday, he says, can you imagine if the Earth stopped moving?
Again, that's a fallacy of automatic assumption when it comes to we are turning. Imagine how disastrous it'd be if we stopped. Okay, well, do you want to prove we are turning first?
All right. Can I say something, please?
Well, what would be turning exactly?
Maybe
No,
I
it's their
can't say
claim.
nothing.
It's their positive burden, is the point. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, but
There's
they're
no
already
such thing
assuming
as.
what would be turning, right?
Owen's determined
Holy
to ruin
shit,
you.
Owen, thank you.
I heard your
Forget
name.
it.
He's heard it, but he's determined. Go ahead, Neil. Second time's a charm.
Isn't it easier to say there's no Earth-based Coriolis? There is a Coriolis effect. You could demonstrate it on a roundabout, but as far as Earth-based Coriolis, that don't exist.
Sure, but I'm trying to wire the audience to understand that you could take the anti-globe position of stating that there is no Coriolis effect. I'm suggesting that isn't necessary, that you should only hold a positive claimant to task if they claim that there isn't an effect to be seen. And you go, well, that doesn't prove anything then. So there's nothing to see here. So there's nothing that we would notice that would prove your claim we are spinning then, based on your claim that there's nothing to see, no drift to observe. I mean, that's fine for you to say as an individual. Meanwhile, the globe claims there's 15 degrees an hour of deviation as the Earth turns underneath stuff. That's what will induce Coriolis. You don't have Coriolis unless you've got a separate reference frame turning underneath stuff. Therefore, for the globe claim to be true, Earth's turning underneath stuff. It isn't. But that's down to point out to a numpty that claims that we're not going to see Coriolis deflection, there's nothing to see here, point out their own positive claim from the globe and humiliate them after they make their positive assertion. Regardless if it's anti-flat Earth, oh, we won't see any effect. Well, how are you proving we turn then? And then explain it to them if they don't understand. Alternatively, if they say we do see drift, you say, oh, right, so Earth turns underneath aeroplanes, shortening their flight times when travelling west? Absolutely not. It's totally absurd. When they say, oh, well, it wouldn't affect aeroplanes, yeah, you can be damn sure a non-inertial turning reference frame turning underneath an aeroplane to give you the effect of it drifting, aka Coriolis, which is absolutely the globe's claim, you'd notice and it would shorten the flight times if Earth was turning underneath them to give you Coriolis. If Earth isn't turning underneath the aeroplane, then it isn't going to be giving you Coriolis effect. So we haven't got any proof of Earth turn. But to get to that level it's taken me 7 years.
Right, but recognizing the danger, because within the Coriolis argument, you are begging the question that Earth has a radial value and an axis to turn upon.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a...
That was my point, right?
Oh, was it, Arwin? Well, then you go ahead.
How can it turn if it is in the shape already?
You'll need a flat Earth for that, John.
Well, for the radius value, you will, but just because the Earth's flat doesn't mean it has an axis. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely not. Sandwiching the equatorial plane antipode doesn't give you a globe Earth. It gives you a model, if you want to call it that, with two flat planes sandwiched underneath one another. Antipodal from one another, rather. Let's move on. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
So are all of the planets flat?
What do you mean planets? Planets is just a description in the heliocentric model, one of many names ascribed to lights in the sky. But as for them being flat, they're just one-dimensional as far as I'm concerned. They're just points of light in the sky.
And we're not up there.
I don't know what up there would be.
Where the rest of the lights in the sky are. We're not up there orbiting with them.
You're missing my point. I don't know if they've got a location of sorts at all. I don't know what they are to ascribe them having a location for me to not be in, is what I'm trying to say, Neil.
I could tell you what to call it, but you wouldn't.
What,
I
like
call
it,
it a
agree?
hologram.
What, wouldn't get any evidence from you when you did?
Well, how can I? How can I provide evidence other than pointing out the missing of evidence and the consistency of that missing evidence?
Lack of evidence isn't going to prove anything, though, is it?
What do I look like? India over here?
I will, but not scientifically.
It's not going to prove anything. It might disprove their position if you point out a lack of evidence. In regards to gravity, the current rhetoric is it's pseudo for space-time bending. So who cares?
Right, but by giving it a name, I automatically summarize the specific points that led up to it becoming that name. So it's pointing out, like, it's not even like declaring what it is. It's just pointing out all the specific factors that are all not present leading up to that name, pretty much. That's what it is. To
Fair
point out, hey, we only have an angle. We can't actually get there. We don't even know what it is or how it exactly works, other than how the angles work.
Perfect segue. But well, before I do the segue into elevation angle question, 81 people watching, so massive warm welcome to all of you who just joined us. Please smash the share button if you've not done so already. Any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
Not as of yet.
You could.
One more time.
I said not as of yet. Nobody has. They get an angle from the center, but not from the surface of the Earth.
Why doesn't my compass work vertical?
I've got to take umbrage with Neil there. No one's ever done it
just
from the
make it
center.
parallel.
Oh,
Is it just make it parallel from the center of the Earth? Like, oh, from the center of the Earth, oh, parallel that. Oh, it's on the surface now. I mean, once you allow yourself to like make angles from the center of a ball Earth, then everything is good, right?
No.
No, don't they do it? Isn't that the Hell's Angles?
Hell's
No,
angles, yeah.
nobody's been there.
Can't be there. It's transposed.
Nobody's taken it. Yeah.
Go ahead, Adam.
Just to say, nobody's been there. Nobody's ever taken an angle from the center of a presupposed ball. Yeah. You only ever take an angle from the surface or in relation to the surface, a flat surface.
Right.
Well, when you take it to the center of a ball,
Can you guys,
flat.
today, can you hear other people still talking when you start talking? Can you hear them? Adam's still in the same thought. He's had 3 attempts to get out.
Yep, and I thought I'd rumpus Neil's rumpusing.
Please, can you not?
I phrased it wrong. Adam's correct. I'm wrong.
Okie dokie. We've got a little treat today. So, from the annals of history, we've got a 1989 physics video from NASA, and it's been published, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago now. But the video itself is really, really, really old, and we've already watched maybe a minute of it because John was looking to do a presentation. I'll give a little bit of preamble and then I'll let you reiterate it, refracted curvature. And his task was to produce a presentation in regards to using the equatorial plane, etc., all the stuff we cover with celestial navigation and the globe burger, i.e. how Earth must be flat for them to do this process. And instead of actually producing his own, he's gone, well, this hostile witness, NASA, has done it all for us. So let's have a look at that. Anyway, there's my little preamble, John. If you want to give us a bit more insight into what we're going to be watching, that'd be great.
Yeah, it's the elements of orbital mechanics, and they'll explain to you. 5 of the 6 require Earth to be flat, so it's going to be a cluster screw.
Okay, I mean, as always, although it's NASA, with a slight bitter taste in my mouth, please let them know. At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So there's a link going by in the live stream chat if you are watching, if you're amongst the 82 people watching. So one person shared. Please share the show. Let them know. Just go over, drop them a nice friendly link with a comment that says something like, "We responded to your video." At Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, or something like that. Just keep it clean so it doesn't get immediately removed by the videographer. In this case, NASA STI program. So as John's already alluded to, the title of the video is called Spaceflight, the application of orbital mechanics. And the channel, as I say, is NASA STI program. So please let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. So we're going to get right into it. Let's do it.
This line is also referred to as the line of Apsides. The first orbital element is the semi-major axis. It is simply 1/2 the major axis.
You're going to need a flat plane for that. It's depicted on screen. So far, globe in this depiction, redundant, not needed. Surplus 2 requirements.
Circular orbits have no apogee or perigee. Therefore, the semi-major axis is simply 1/2 the diameter of the orbit.
Yeah, that's the celestial sphere.
Right, the orbit is being described with respect to the movement of the stars in the celestial sphere.
Yes. That's apsis and periapsis, and
But
apogee and perigee.
the observation thereof taking place on a what's the term? Flat plane.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're going to
Major
tell you that here in just a minute.
Axis is used to define the size of the orbit. From this, the orbital period, or time that it takes for the satellite to complete one orbit, can be calculated. The shape of an orbit is defined by the second orbital element called eccentricity. For all ellipses, the value of eccentricity lies between 0 and 1. The larger the value, the more elliptical the orbit. A spacecraft in Earth orbit with an eccentricity equal to or greater than 1 will escape the Earth's gravitational field.
Interestingly enough, eccentricity is how much something deviates from horizontal. Horizontal.
Is that right? I didn't know that. That's why I kept my mouth shut. So you're going to need a flat plane for that eccentricity.
Absolutely.
Epic.
When orienting an orbit in space, a three-dimensional coordinate system must be defined.
Uh-oh. It sounds like we're going to be needing a Cartesian flat Earth system then.
The coordinate system commonly used is the geocentric equatorial coordinate system, which has its origin at the Earth's center.
On a flat plane. John, I'm stealing your thunder here.
No, go ahead.
He just described a flat, non-rotating stationary plane as the center of his coordinate system.
That's correct. So when we say, I should have given this a bit more drama. All of the things we described in the last 6 months, where we've started to filter in this terminology, all roads lead to a flat Earth. Here, we are having NASA detail precisely how flat Earth must be, and how this takes place in a Cartesian system at the center of a globe Earth on a flat plane. That's how it works. Your orbital mechanics require a flat Earth to infer. In other words, you start with a flat plane and angle measurements to the celestial dome of the heavens off the equatorial plane. That's a flat Earth. And then you infer that the angle from that center point in the center of a globe Earth is projected out to the surface you're no longer standing on when you detail the globe Earth that you're not measuring from, not utilizing, and not putting into effect the angles that you actually measure. They're going to take place inside a globe Earth on a flat plane. All roads lead to flat Earth because, say it with me, Earth is flat.
Well, I like that saying, but couldn't you say as an alternative, like all measurements lead to a flat Earth? Because that's pretty much what that is, right? Like every time you start to measure things, or you know what, with the baseline, all the measurements eventually, like, yeah, it doesn't, none of this works with the measurements unless you assume the Earth is flat, because it is.
Yeah, precisely. For any of this to be back calculatable and still function, you need it to work with stars, and the angles that work to give us the descriptions in these mapped out star maps, or the almanac itself, they're all derived from a flat plane. You can't get around it. That's why it works this way. That's why it's never changed. You're always measuring elevation angle measurements with respect to the flat plane. That's why planes, aeroplanes, fly that way. They're not working with the idea that there's a void opening up in front of them at 8 inches per mile squared. On the contrary, the Earth is dealt with as flat, even when you infer it's a sphere.
This coordinate system is a non-rotating reference system in which a satellite's orbital plane tends to remain fixed relative to the stars while the Earth turns beneath it.
So, reversing the actual motion that we observe then. Check out what's on screen, ladies and gentlemen. That would be a flat plane that can have points plotted anywhere on this area and expanding out massively beyond it. Ergo, it doesn't work with the globe. The points that you can put on the equatorial plane have no correlation to the sphere Earth. It's wrapped around and surplus to requirements, and you can infer that the angles taken from the centre emanate out through a surface you're not standing on. But this is the world we're dealing with. This is how it's dealt with. This is the equatorial plane that all reference to the sky will be derived from. Earth is flat. This is epic, John. Great video.
The XY plane is the Earth's equatorial plane. The positive x-axis points to the vernal equinox. This is the point where the sun appears to cross the Earth's equator on its way north on the first day of spring each year. The z-axis is along the Earth's spin axis toward the North Pole. Nodes are points in a satellite's orbit which intersect the Earth's equatorial plane. The ascending node is the point at which the spacecraft crosses the equator going from south to north.
Given that what's being detailed is with respect to the equatorial plane and only works at the vernal equinox, if 10th Man was here, he'd expand on that. What are they detailing when they talk about spacecraft? Well, they're talking about an extrapolation taken from a flat plane put into a motion that is in respect to the stars that have been measured off a flat plane, and then detailing how it physically works out in an orbit that only exists in mathematics. Hence, space is fake. They've invented an area that they say is the stars that have been measured off a flat plane and claim you can put orbits or put items into orbit. You can't. It's a derivation in respect to a flat plane. There is no falling around a sphere because there is no sphere.
The descending node is where the spacecraft crosses the equator going from north to south. The line joining the two nodes is called the line of nodes. The orientation of an orbit is determined by 3 orbital element angles.
I'm going to bet you need a flat Earth for all 3.
Well, they are angles, so yeah.
The right ascension of the ascending node,
you'll need a flat Earth for that,
is the angle between the x-axis and the ascending node.
X-axis is the line along the ground that's a flat baseline. You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
It is always measured eastward from the direction away from the vernal equinox in the...
Yeah, because that's where it only works when you transpose this into the reification of a sphere Earth. Then they match up on the vernal equinox, and that's how it's all derived. Isn't that why we end up with these crazy distances where the sun is claimed in the heliocentric model to be closer in winter? I forget.
Yes, it has to do with the calculating these calculations is why they say that. Yes.
As I say, if 10th was here, he'd expand on that, but he's not.
Earth's equatorial plane. The argument of perigee is the angle between the ascending node and the point of perigee.
You're going to need a flat Earth for that. That's a line along the baseline described with respect to the equatorial plane. That's a flat plane. That's Earth being flat for this measurement to exist in the first instance. You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
It is measured in the orbital plane in the direction of spacecraft motion. Inclination is the angle between the equatorial plane and the orbital plane.
You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
If he says the word plane one more time in relation to this ball.
I was just going to say, like, the amount of times he says the word plane, we're having a ball on the screen. The magic trick is hilarious.
Yeah, just erase the ball and you get reality.
The ball, what's the ball got to do with it? Everything's being done with respect to angles off these two planes, the orbital plane and the equatorial plane.
Yeah, you would only know that if you're listening to it. But if you don't know any better, you're just watching, you just think this is happening in the middle of a sphere.
Exactly.
Satellite which has an eastward velocity component at the ascending node has an orbital inclination lying between 0 and 90 degrees.
Again, you'll need a flat Earth for that measurement.
Such an orbit is called a prograde orbit. A satellite which moves due north at the ascending node is in a polar orbit. Polar orbits have an orbital inclination of exactly 90 degrees. A satellite with a westward velocity component at the ascending node is in a retrograde orbit and has an orbital inclination between 90 and 180 degrees. The 5 orbital elements explained thus far describe the size, shape, and orientation of the orbit in space.
With respect to a flat plane.
The final element is a time value used to locate the satellite in its orbit. A satellite moves in a very predictable manner. It stays on schedule. Thus, if the time at which a satellite passes a particular point is known, the time when it will pass any other point can be determined.
They got fake images because, in spite of them not having the black area, this is claimed to be in space, based on the diagrams that preceded it. Therefore, what we're looking down from is the sky vacuum. Well, all of these high-pressure clouds and high-pressure gases that are below this satellite would all be dispersing into the vacuum that this is claimed to be in. So this is fake.
The particular point chosen is perigee, and the time of perigee passage is the last of the 6 orbital elements.
Yeah, so you don't need a flat plane for the time.
Unless you're going to associate it to perigee, and then you will. But for time itself, you don't need a flat plane. But
right.
If you're going to associate it to perigee, you will. So that one was kind of iffy, so I just let them have one that wasn't.
I think if you're measuring the time it takes something to traverse a flat plane.
Yeah, but
you're not just taking time. It's the time of it moving across a flat plane.
Yes, with respect to what it's timing, it's with respect to a flat plane, but the time itself he's detailed specifically as one element and then linked it back to perigee, was it? Or whatever he linked it back to. As soon as he does, as John just said, then you're going to need a flat plane for that. But to just assert the time itself, no, the time doesn't need a flat plane.
No, he's not asserting the time. He's not saying it's 9 o'clock.
No.
The time is only in reference to how much time it takes to transit across a flat plane.
Sure. So he's going to need a flat plane for that.
Without a flat plane, his time has no reference to it. It's got no reference point. You can't have the 6. It requires a flat plane. It's 6 out of 6.
Fair enough.
All right, fine. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be able to argue that, but I just let them have one so they could feel better about themselves.
If he wants the time boiling an egg, he doesn't need a flat plane.
The timing how long it takes to traverse a flat plane, you'll need a flat plane for that.
Unfortunately, I do think that's the case, yeah.
The 6 orbital elements depict a spacecraft's orbit in non-rotating coordinates. To visualize an orbit relative to the rotating Earth, a projection traces the spacecraft's position on the Earth's surface. The projected path is called the ground track. As a satellite orbits the Earth, the ground track shifts westward. There are 2 causes for this.
Problem with that. Because I don't think that satellite is on the ground.
No, you're confusing a Bev try thinking argument where he misunderstood the description of a ground position for a star, i.e. the position beneath the star on the ground. Well, likewise, although we would have already, we have debunked the notion that there's a tin can floating around in a sky vacuum, their notions of the ground path is where it would be on the ground if you looked above at that particular time, according to them. Just so we're clear.
First, the primary contributor is the Earth's rotation toward the east under the orbital plane.
You'll need a flat Earth for that. See, the rotating Earth gives you the non-rotating motion of this when described, because you can't have it both ways, can you? You infer that the non-rotating path of the satellite is in respect to the rotating path of the Earth. No, the stars move, the Earth doesn't. That's why it's got to be described as this. Earth being stationary. That's how it will be described, because that's what's actually happening.
Second, because the Earth is not a uniform sphere and bulges at the equator.
Earth's not a sphere. The derivation of the assertion that it is came from a flat plane.
Its gravity is greatest at the equator.
Gravity being greatest, what, like it's a force? George Musa, Scientific American, quote, "Gravity is not a force. How can it be greater when it's not a force?"
This causes the orbital plane to rotate slowly around the Earth's polar axis.
Sounds like a cause and effect relationship based on a non-force of a gravity that hasn't been a force for 107 years. This is just nonsense.
In a motion called precession.
So the gravity of the plane causes the plane to rotate slower or faster. You're still using a flat plane, dude.
Describe it.
Precession is toward the west for prograde orbits and toward the east for retrograde orbits. For low Earth orbits, such as those of the Space Shuttle at 150 miles altitude.
This is not a space shuttle out at 150 miles altitude. This is clearly fake as hell.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that the black area depicted in this imagery is claimed to be 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, and the area below is claimed to be high pressure gas that would expand into the area of vacuum if it were true. This is just nonsense. Sky's not a
What do you
vacuum.
mean
The
that's
gas would
fake?
fill the space.
What do you mean that's fake? I'm sure they sent the cameraman out there in front of the space shuttle to get that fantastic footage. What do you mean?
There's no space shuttles in a sky vacuum. The gas would fill the space. This is a second law of thermodynamics violation.
The
I don't know.
westward
They're
shift
showing it. You've never been up there.
I've seen Thunderbirds too. 108 people watching. Massive thank you to all of you. Smash the share button. Please share the show if you haven't done so already.
the ground track, due to the Earth's rotation, is about 22.5 degrees, while the shift due to precession is only about a half degree.
You'll need a flat Earth for those degree measurements. This isn't looking good, John.
The inclination of a satellite orbit determines the north and south latitude limits of its ground track.
Two things that need a flat Earth. The measurement itself and the latitude position you'll reference it to. Both need a flat plane.
Well, I think this could definitely represent balloons on a high wind stream drift. Right?
Maybe. They're claiming
On this
orbital
sheet.
motion, though, Arwin.
Yeah, sure they do.
Well, no, they are. That's what we're covering. As much as your speculation is fine, I guess.
The minimum
I'm just
orbital
looking at the
inclination.
graph.
Yeah, sure. I'm not
Sorry.
denying that there might be that motion. But I don't care. I'm not claiming it. They're claiming it's orbits. After extrapolating out data from flat planes that they keep mentioning over and over and over again.
Is equal to the latitude of the launch site. And
Go on.
I was just going to say, like we say often that orbits are begging the question. Now that begs the question of what are they begging the question of? Because I have not heard them reference any of this to a sphere one time.
and is achieved by launching due east. For example, if a satellite is launched due east out of the Kennedy Space Center, which is located at 28.5 degrees north latitude, its orbital inclination will be 28.5 degrees.
Another couple of things that'll need its inclination measurement and the latitude description both need a flat plane.
And the limits of its ground track will vary between 28.5 degrees north latitude and 28.5 degrees south latitude. If launch azimuth or direction of flight at launch, measured eastward from due north, is increased from due east, the orbital inclination angle
You'll need a flat Earth for that.
increases as well as the maximum latitude of the north-south
You'll need a flat Earth for that.
ground track. Therefore, the latitude limits of the ground track
You'll need a flat Earth for that.
equal the new launch inclination.
You'll need a flat Earth for that.
Similarly, if launch azimuth is decreased from due east, orbital
You want to do it instead? Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say it's going to be repetitive after this point. If you want to just move on, all they can do is reference it to a flat plane. They've already went through the elements, and like Adam detailed, even the one that I was willing to give them would be in reference to a flat plane. So if you want to do that other video, it's just they're going to keep referencing a flat
Why?
plane
That's
over
fun.
and over again.
This is
Okay.
fun. They're not shy.
We'll give it a couple more minutes.
inclination once again increases as well as the latitude limits of the ground track. The maximum practical inclination from a Kennedy Space Center launch is 57 degrees. This limit is imposed for safety considerations in order to keep the spacecraft and its booster system from flying over land masses during the ascent phase. To obtain an orbit with an inclination greater than 57 degrees,
Yeah, you're right. They're just going to keep talking about degree measurements off a flat plane constantly, aren't they?
Oh yeah, that's all they have. And it's like once you see the trick, you'll never stop saying it.
the
So next
spacecraft
time
is
somebody
launched
talks about orbits,
It's nuts, isn't it? I can't unhear this every time I hear him say angle. Just go, I know what the angle is going to be measured off of, a flat Earth, because you can't get an elevation angle measurement or any other angle measurement in this respect from anything other than a flat surface. So it's all with respect to a flat plane.
from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Vandenberg offers the opportunity for southerly launches with orbit inclinations between approximately 70 degrees prograde through 138 degrees retrograde.
And you can put the terms in, but there's still angles that need a flat Earth. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy if you want to leave it there. I'm happy to move on from this video if everyone's got the point in the audience. So we're all appreciating that it needs a flat plane. If you're watching, hopefully so.
No, I think they
You want
hung
to move on to the
themselves.
second video?
Well, I've got it queued up, right? So this is Lex Freeman, right?
Some people come here
So
looking.
yeah, I'll cue this up and we'll cover this now. So we're going to cover this. The channel is Dr. Brian Keating, right? So as always, let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and give him the heads up that we responded to his video. So this will be whizzing its way by right now in the live stream chat. So yeah, just let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Please leave a nice, friendly, clean comment so it doesn't automatically get deleted by the videographer. Is there a particular timestamp, or do you just want us to get into this, Gene? This is Gene's selection, by the way, so blame Gene if it's awful.
You can just skip through it. I just thought it was for a goof, but go ahead.
I mean, do you know a particular point where it gets...
I mean, I just saw the title and I said it was going to be a shit show, so.
You watch this?
Woohoo! Blind watch review.
No, but I at least want to know that the person...
before we go on,
Go on, John.
I was just going to say before we go on, I would like to applaud NASA on doing a lot better job detailing how we require a flat Earth for orbits than I ever could. That was very well done. And I'm serious. I want to thank NASA for doing such a good job.
Fantastic hostile witness.
You didn't win the Nobel Prize. The team of Bicep that led the Bicep 2 didn't win the Nobel Prize because of some space dust.
That's right.
Smick
Schmutz.
Which one is the moon? Which one is...
That one's the dust.
This
Space
one's-
dust, yeah.
There's no such thing as space dust. The idea that there's an area of low pressure where the gas we breathe at high pressure could vacate into to have dust in is absurd. So straight off the bat, this is nonsense.
Is this,
What are we looking
is this
at?
Lex
So why
Friedman and Brian Keaton?
Come again, Chocolate?
Is this Lex Friedman with Brian Keaton? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Oh, we're going into heliocentric wonderland now.
why is Space Dust the villain of this whole story?
Well, it's funny, you know, I wrote these books, and I don't know about you, but when you get all these books, I'm sure you get books, people send you books. They always come in these dust jackets, right? I was always like, what the hell is a dust jacket? Like, how much dust is raining down at any moment? I mean, this is immaculate. This room is Russian tidiness galore. But in a normal household, how much dust is raining down? It's not really pretty until I wrote a book. And I realized, you know, I'm writing a story about the origin of the universe.
Is this going to be a false equivalence?
And the prologue, you know, to the cosmos, and dust is going to cover this story. It's actually more a story about astrophysics and cosmology than dust. And this is the link,
The pure pseudoscience, then.
between the cosmological and the astrophysical. So what does that mean? So astrophysics is, broadly speaking, the study of physical phenomena
No, definitely not. It's pure pseudoscience. Physical? What, when you're looking through your little telescopes and coming up with your maths? That's definitely not physics that you're dealing with. Physical and natural world would be covered by science.
manifest in the heavens, astronomical phenomena.
Testing it, well, like experiments and stuff, tests in a scientific context is hypothesis actualization. You're definitely not doing that.
Cosmology is concerned with the origin, evolution, composition of the universe as
Another total pseudoscience, then.
a whole, but it's not really concerned with stars, galaxies, and planets per se, other than
Planets, what your words you ascribe to little lights that have got a weird motion you can't explain beyond making up stories about what they do in the in-between period when it's not dark.
how they might help us measure the Hubble constant, the density of the universe, the neutrino content, et cetera, et cetera.
All nonsense.
So we have a tendency.
Yeah, we're thick into it.
I'm sorry.
No, we're right into the thick of it. You're right, Chocolate.
To kind of look a little bit, you know, they're like, not all astronomers and astrophysicists are equal. They're all equal, but some are more equal than others. So we have kind of a
Why? No, they're all bullshitters. Every last one of them.
prejudice, a little swagger, right? And cosmologists are studying, you know, we're using Einstein, we're not using like, you know, Boltzmann, or we're thinking of the biggest possible pictures.
Why? Einstein's been thoroughly debunked by quantum mechanics. You're using the pseudo geometry of Einstein? Why would you do that? You think this is physical? It's right there in the title of his geometry. Pseudo.
In so doing, you can actually become blinded to otherwise obvious effects that people, you know, would have not overlooked. And
Right, effects. So we're talking about the physical, we're talking about effects. Then great, we've got a method to establish the cause of those. Like, actually advance our understanding. It's called the scientific method. It exclusively deals with effects. It's all it does. So obviously we've had lots of hints at science, so we're going to have these effects that people might have overlooked being studied in an empirical method, aren't we?
in our case, when we sought out the signal, we were using the photons that make up this primordial heat bath that surrounds the universe.
What? Primordial heat bath that surrounds the universe? I'd like to see some evidence of that in physical terms.
Only at 3 degrees Kelvin, approximately.
Approximately? Well, surely you've measured this, right?
We're using those as a type of film onto which gravitational waves will reverberate.
You're using it. You mean you're just making it up? Not something you've gone out, measured, studied. Nothing with physicality to it whatsoever. You're layering it on top of the pseudo geometry of Einstein. You're doing that, are you? Oh, wow. I mean,
It's just using computers, Nathan. This is like from the actual supposed readings, and now it's just models in computers, and they forget it's just models in computers, and they think it's real.
well, he said it was physical. He said the word physical. He's just a
Right.
fraud.
It, make them oscillate preferentially in a polarized way.
What, when you layer something on top of pseudo geometry, do they physically vibrate in that pseudo geometry of bent space-time? No, they don't. You're a fraud.
And then we can use our polarized sunglasses, but in a microwave format, to detect the characteristic twofold symmetry pattern of under rotation.
What? You detecting something that exists only in pseudo bent space-time geometry? No, you're not. Definitely not.
Sorry. But yeah, Nathan, he's saying it so eloquently. I mean, he's really good at this technobabble talk. Very fluent.
Oh, yeah, that's why I prefaced it. We're going to be in heliocentric wonderland with this guy. And the funny part is, right? Not to knock him, but he claims to be from what I've listened, from what I've heard of him, he claims to be an experimentalist at whatever university that he's studying. So he's supposedly doing science in quotes using the scientific method, but then he'll talk about all this other cosmic nonsense that he thinks he's doing science on. So it's kind of a funny thing with this guy.
He's a fraud. Complete fraud.
Yep.
That's the technical way that we undergo it. I mean, there's a lot more to it.
Sorry, that was a sentence fragment and a half. That's the technical way that we don't know. Is it? Well, talk about having confidence in what don't know. I don't know what that word means.
But there are more than one thing that can mimic exactly that signal. First of all, when you look at the signal,
Is this what you got back with your polarized lenses when layering something on top of pseudo geometry? Yes, total bullshit, mate.
Signal, if inflation took place, big if, but if it took place.
Inflation, a concept within Einsteinian pseudo geometry. That inflation that you're layering something on top of and then looking at it through polarized lenses. This is all bullshit.
The signal would be about 1 or 2 parts per billion of the CMB temperature itself.
Right, temperature of the cosmic micro background. That would be the lights in the sky you looked at through the temperature measurement capabilities of your telescopes, because they've got thermometers in the vision that you see through them, have they? No, again, just complete bullshit.
So a few nanokelvin.
So based on the temperature measured through your telescope.
CMB is a few Kelvin. The signal from these beams.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, when he levels his telescope, is that with respect to what?
Flat Earth.
E-modes would be a few nanokelvin.
So when he measures
Go on.
I was just going to say, when he measures a return signal from said telescope, it will be with respect to horizontal then.
Yes.
That's
yes, indeed. All roads lead to a flat Earth, including all of this visual-based thermometer discussion that he's having, with the minor difference in Kelvin when looked at through polarized lenses. What he means is, this whole bullshit's brought to you by spectroscopy. That's what that means.
It's astonishing to think Penzias and Wilson, 1965, measured something that's 1 billion times brighter. And that was what, 60 years ago? Let's call it 60 years ago since they discovered it. Moore's Law, you're more expert than that. Let's call it every 2 years.
So are you about to compare Moore's Law to observing twinkling lights? You're talking about the development of technology versus observing twinkling lights. Okay, let's see where this goes.
So you're talking about like 2 to the 30th power, doubling or something like that at that. So let's call it 2 to the 20th, something like that. So that's like only 2 to the 10th is a 1,000, right? Correct my math, I'm wrong. Yeah, 2 to the 20th is 1,000,000, right? 2 to the 30th is 1 billion. So we're outpacing Moore's Law in terms of the sensitivity of our instruments to detect these feeble signals from the cosmos.
You're getting really good at looking at the lights. Sorry, weren't you just detailing its difference in Kelvin? Am I missing something, Adam? Did I miss something in those strings of numbers where he told us what powers were? Did I miss something?
And they don't have to deal with, in the semiconductor factory in Santa Clara, California. They don't have to deal with meteorites and and things like coming into the laboratory.
No, neither do you. No, nothing. There's no space dust. There's nothing coming from space. There's no sky vacuum for things to come from.
It's a clean room. It's pristine. They can control everything about it, right? We can't control the cosmos.
But yet there's a difference in Kelvin when looking at things, do you? I see. So what, just disclaiming how big a bullshitter you are before you go on to some more bullshit, right?
And the cosmos is literally littered with particles of schmutz, of failed...
No, it isn't. No. There's no sky vacuum to have schmutz in.
Planets, asteroids, meteoroids, things that didn't coalesce to make either the Earth...
Coalesce? When describing the uneven distribution of mass causing the bent space-time in the pseudo-geometry you layered things on to look at with polarized lenses, to then describe how you haven't got a controlled environment to infer the Kelvin differences. I mean, I can keep up with your bullshit, but it's still bullshit.
From a flat plane.
Oh, yeah. Damn. There's that Lamborghini. You're going to need a flat plane for that bullshit.
The moon, the planet Jupiter or its moons, or get sucked into them and make craters on them, etc.
Sucked into lights in the sky being described in orbital motion by way of about 5 assumptions, but then notwithstanding that the forces aren't in place anymore, but you've got bent geometry that you can layer things on top of to look at with polarized lenses from a flat plane,
etc. The rest of it is falling, and it comes in a power spectrum. There's very few, thank God.
Who's this guy? Is Brian Keating nodding along like he knows what he's talking about?
Pixelub-sized, impact or progenitors that will take out all life on Earth. But there's
what? No, nothing's going to be taking out all life on Earth from space. In the same way, there's no schmutz in space. No, that's not going to happen. No, your reification outside of the pseudo-geometry of Einstein isn't going to kill anything. It's not physical. Yeah, but your fear-based porn isn't going to be, jerked off to here. No, we don't do that here. You need to get people's attention, though, don't you? So drop in a subtle little fear-based mind control trick by talking about how life will all end. What, from the schmutz in a place that isn't real? Yeah, life's going to end because the Narnia region's going to deliver something really horrible. No, mate, no. But on most normies, this would work. You'd have their attention, wouldn't you? Me, you just sparked a bit of outrage with your total bullshittery.
There's extremely large number of tiny dust particles and microscopic grains.
No, there isn't.
And then there's a fair number of intermediate-sized particles.
No, there isn't.
It turns out this little guy here is the end product of a collapsing star that explodes in what's called a supernova.
No, it isn't. It's just some bullshit you made up whilst rubbing your fingers together like a magician. Like a literal magician. No, you don't have stardust in your hands. There isn't any stardust. There's no dust. There's no space. There's no descriptions of your stars being massive. There's no implosions. There's no white dwarfs. There's no really heavy stars that have collapsed in on themselves, creating this tiny little bit of stardust that you rub together like a magician. It's all nonsense.
Type 2 supernova. So stars spend most of their life fusing helium nuclei, protons, into...
Yeah, you can do the magic trick too. Yeah, it's just nonsense, mate. It's almost like you're making what your maths about the pseudo-geometry of Einstein into physical reality by just holding something. Like a really cool prop.
Neutrons into helium nuclei. And then from there, it can make other things like beryllium and briefly make beryllium and carbon.
No, it can't. There are no collapsing stars in a sky vacuum. If they were gases collapsing in on themselves to forge the heavy elements that then get exploded out into space, coincidentally, only after supernova do we have the gases and heavy elements following entropic law and dispersing into space to create us with these elementary particles that have been forged in the hearts of dying stars for Michelle Thaler to claim that the rocks are our cousins. That's this bullshit. Yeah, again, I can keep up with his nonsense, even though it is baffling to most. However, so while the star exists in a sky vacuum, becoming more dense and collapsing in on itself, not expanding out into the vacuum, upon forging the heavy elements, it will then explode and disperse in line with entropic law, according to this bullshit. So, half its life it defies the second law of thermodynamics until it's forged all the things that we need to create life in their bullshit narrative. And then it explodes, depositing all of these heavy elements throughout the universe, in line with the second law of dispersion. So, half the story as entropic law working for it, half working against in defiance of the entropic law of nature we experience always. This is a crap story. Full of plot holes, full of defiances of natural law, Except when you're depositing out the stuff we need to make our bodies, then it'll fall in line with entropic law to disperse it. Dispersion, second law.
Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, all the way up until it tries to make iron and nickel. Iron and nickel are endothermic. It takes more energy than gets liberated to make an atom of iron. When that happens, there's no longer enough heat supplying pressure to resist the gravitational collapse of the material.
But gravitational collapse, pressure, we've got two concepts here. One is pressure. That would be the force, the gases you're describing imploding with fusion or fission or whichever one it is to create these heavy elements in the heart of this dying star that he's describing. So it's going inwards, creating pressure in. Hold on. Pressure with gas is it moving in all directions at a high velocity. Oh, what's that you say? It's counteracted by bent pseudo-4 space-time? You're telling me that the uneven distribution of mass when described by Einstein bending an invented medium known as space-time in is literally quoted as being pseudo-geometry for this crap. That is your get around for this violation of the second law of thermodynamics, creating pressure, the very thing that would defy the second law of thermodynamics. No, mate, no, we've just undone that at its very heart. Yeah, this sits very much in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics. What was that, the guy nodding opposite? You thought you were really smart, did he? No. He was just duped by a little prop that you gave him. Really easy, wasn't it? Just hand him something, some little bit of bullshit, and he's holding it. Next thing, everything you say is physics. Even though it's literally described by the man who invented it, that's Einstein, as pseudo-geometry.
Material that was produced earlier,
Well,
so the star formed.
Good.
I was going to say also, whenever they talk about the eccentricity of an escape velocity of these particles that are being created in stars, it's always with respect to the horizontal of that star. But they don't claim that star is horizontal, the surface of it.
No, they cherry pick.
So that's a
They
problem.
cherry pick from their measurements. Not from their measurements, from their calculations, the bits that are relevant, and then describe the flat Earth measurement like it's a non-issue to just drop in the fact that you're measuring it with respect to a plane, with all respects. But they'll still waffle on about orbits. It's like, how can you have an orbit if the description that you've got it from comes from a flat plane? Makes no sense. They obviously don't recognise the doublespeak. We've only just started recognising in the last 12 months, so. Great video, Gene. Great video, John. Both today's selections were great. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed the show. But we are going to have an after show. So with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned. As I say, there will be an after show to follow, though unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a massive thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member, hit me up on PayPal and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. A massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a day! What a lovely day!